Giants are 2-0 to start the year, and they take on the Cowboys Monday night.
And the never say die Jets pull off the improbable comeback in Cleveland. Can they continue the success against Cincinnati?
And New York football right now is not saying die. They won 3 or 4 games. Let's talk about it right here.
This is the Pix 11 New York Sports Nation podcast.
All right, everybody, welcome to this week's edition of New York Sports Nation. As always, we appreciate you taking the time. If you got a few more seconds on your hand, please like, subscribe, review, all that good stuff.
So let's start with Giant football. Moose, let's start with you, and Joe, get your opinion. We spent a lot of time in the offseason talking about a culture change, but Daboll and Shane downplayed everything. And they just said we want to improve every week. But they're 2-0. If Daboll goes 3-0, it's sort of a historic start. They got shot against the Cowboys. Moose, what's your take? And Joe, what's your take on the Giants and the culture and how they're playing?
Yeah, great. I mean, the early returns are fantastic. Got a little lucky against Carolina maybe. Great second half against the Tennessee Titans. It's important to win football games. So for all that, let's not make it anything more than what it is. The expectations for the Giants haven't changed. They're not all of a sudden a championship team. Could they be a playoff team in the NFC? Maybe, given the schedule. I mean, you could see them beating the Cowboys on Monday night. Then they have the Chicago Bears. So could they start the year 4-0? Yeah. It's important to win football games. The Giants have lost a lot of games in the last 5-6 years. So that's the importance here. They diminished expectations before the start of the year, and it's good to see this team finishing.
I think you put it perfectly right there. They're finishing. These are games that in years past they would have found ways to lose, but instead they found ways to win. You mentioned against Tennessee, Daniel Jones throws that interception in the end zone, gets chewed out by his head coach, but doesn't panic or, they still find a way to win that game. And in the NFL, where the margin is razor thin between winning and losing, where 500 is pretty much the design. It doesn't take too much to put you over top. It's one play here, one play there, and if you're locked in and focused, then that's the team that ends up winning the game. And this year, Brian Daboll has the guys locked in and focused, and you never know. I like that it's been. They don't have a lot of stars outside of Saquon Barkley on this team, right? And we haven't seen Thibodeau or Ojulari yet. And everybody does their part on this team. And it's coach speak. It's cliche to say that. But they're buying into that. And we'll see what happens with Kenny Golladay and how that plays out moving forward here. But for right now, winning cures a lot of ills.
What is your take on Golladay? It seems inappropriate since they are 2-0. It seems a little me-centric, a little selfish, not team-centric, which seems to be what Daboll is coaching. Is he maybe not a good fit for this team and this culture, no matter how good of a player or talent he might be?
Yeah, I just think, wrong pew in the church. I mean, I think it's, I think when you look at he's frustrated. The Giants are still paying him a ton of money. He's making $21.5 million this year. It cost them more to cut him. Daboll's talked about earning playing time. Galladay's had big drops on this team. He didn't have a touchdown reception. First preseason game, there was a pass. Jones hit him right in the hands against the New England Patriots, and he dropped the football. So, I mean, he's not part of this team's future. He wasn't signed by this regime. He was signed by the previous one. Golladay was brought here to be a big playmaker. You have to, if you're Kenny Golladay, you have to realize he came here to play, but he also came here to get paid. The Giants are still paying him. The money's still coming his way. He's got to earn it on the field, and there's really no audience whatsoever for him to be saying what he's saying.
I disagree. I disagree with that.
There's no team that would be willing to trade for him.
No, I agree.
Stinks.
But as far as the audience is concerned, right? The audience was the New York media who was asking him, who were all asking him about his playing time, and the guy's going to answer the question. So I don't put that on him.
They asked Kadarius Toney about the playing time. He said, "I don't care. We're winning."
Yeah, he, as far as what
Kadarius
he said,
Toney hasn't gotten paid.
Say that again?
Kadarius Toney hasn't gotten paid to the way Kenny Golladay got paid.
Well,
he got a 4-year, $72
it's more
million
mature of a
deal.
response,
right.
too, Mark.
But you said Kenny Galladay's not going to
be about Toney. I'm sorry, Joe. I apologize.
So you said Kenny Galladay's not going to be a part of the Giants' future. He is going to be a part of the Giants' future because they're not. You just said it. There's no market to trade him. Nobody's going to take that money.
Well, they could get rid of him next year.
Maybe, but it's still a huge cap hit if they do.
Yeah, sure.
And that's going to be a tough pill to swallow. Now, look, I always think that you cut out the tumor and you move on, right? You're still going to have to cut, and it's going to hurt. But I don't know in the NFL where we know the Giants are already in salary cap trouble if that's going to make sense for them to do it. So, hey, look, if he becomes disgruntled, and we've seen athletes do that, as far as what he said there, he says, the coaches tell me I'm doing the right things in practice, so I don't get that incongruity. And they asked him specifically, if things don't work out, do you want to get traded? He said, we're not talking about that now. We're focused on week 3 against the Cowboys. So, look, I get it. Like, you're frustrated if people keep coming at you with questions and you're standing up there for 5-10 minutes.
No, I understand.
Something's going to slip out.
Yeah, but if they were 0-2, it'd be something, when he's saying, it's a fact they should be out there playing. The team's 2-0. So... Yeah, I understand David Sills is getting a large percentage of snaps, and people are stunned by that. But for Golladay here, he can vent his frustration. I just don't think it's the time or the place to do it.
I agree, but it's not like he is going up to the camera or the microphone.
Oh, no,
saying,
right. He's getting asked about, but there's a way to answer questions. He's a smart enough guy.
But I prefer this than it slip out through an agent or something like that. We look at the way Denzel Mims has been handling his situation with the Jets, right? It feels like everything's behind closed doors. Things get leaked here, you're leaked there. When you're asking the direct questions, people are going to tell you want to go out and play.
Right, but the difference is Mims' career is rotting on the vine.
Oh, well, and so is Galladay's right now.
Galladay's made a lot
There's
of money.
definitely mold on this right now.
I understand, but there is a little bit of difference when you haven't gotten paid to when you've gotten paid. Like it's one thing if Golladay would have more of a gripe if he was still on that rookie deal or first year. I mean, the Giants are paying him $21.5 million.
Right, but so what do you want him to say? I don't want to play. Fine, I'm getting mine.
No, you could just be like, I'm winning. We're winning games. That's the most important thing.
And he wants to be a part of that winning.
Tony
All
said
these
that.
athletes do. They want to be a part of this winning. And look, I get it. Clearly he's frustrated. I just don't. I think this could have gone a lot worse than it did.
Yeah, sure.
And I think the guy wants to play. I'm glad that he wants to be out there, right? Like, there's still some fire that he wants to be a part of this winning. He believes he has something to offer. He hasn't proven it on the field. And Sills, you talk about the preseason, the chemistry that he and Daniel Jones seemed to have in the preseason was refreshing. And forgive me right now, who's the other wide receiver, Moose, that got hurt? He was looking great, too. He came over from Jacksonville. I'll look it up and get back to you if we can't think it off the top of the head. But the young wide receivers are looking promising for the Giants, and you talk about the culture. It's about what Dable is trying to prove. No, Wan'Dale Robinson, obviously out of Kentucky, not him. There was another guy who was further down the depth chart, 6'4", big guy, I think, out of Jacksonville, who was impressing. Johnson. It's not. I'll get back to that.
Oh, Colin Johnson.
Colin Johnson. There we go. Thank you. Before he went down with the injury. But no, it's good. Like, you're building a culture of it doesn't matter what you're paid. It doesn't matter where you're drafted. Go out there, do your part, and perform, and you'll get the playing time. That's what Pete Carroll did when he first got to Seattle. Look at the quarterback competition. They had brought in Matt Flynn at the time, who was that big money free agent. They drafted Russell Wilson in the 3rd round, and Wilson won the competition. It didn't matter they were playing Flynn. Flynn became the backup. Compete every day at practice. I mean, I think that's going to build the best out of your team. And as hard as that is in the modern NFL with the practice schedule, I think that's what they're doing over at Giants camp right now.
So speaking of young receivers and quarterbacks, I think Daniel Jones is having some Micah Parsons nightmares this week. I mean, the guy's Superman. What do you guys expect? What can they do to neutralize him? I mean, can they try to throw screens so to the tight end, 3-step drops, try to get Saquon going? What?
Yeah, I mean, all of that. I mean, he's just, you have to be kind of omnipresent about where he is on the field. So, I mean, Todd, everything that you just mentioned, I mean, you could do that to kind of, slow down the pass rush, double teams, everything. But what Parsons is and the Cowboys have shown you is he can line up anywhere. So it's not just like, okay, he's coming from the left side or he's coming from the right side or this is what he's going to do. Let's see what kind of move it is, bull rush, spin move, whatever it might be, or speed to the outside. He can beat you in a lot of different ways. I mean, the thing about when you look at Parsons is you have to account to him and where he is every time you're about to snap the ball.
And on top of that,
and if you don't, you're foolish.
Absolutely. So you got to know where he is, one. The other thing is, though, you mentioned screens or draws. His ability to recognize plays is out of this world. And even if he does get beat sometimes, his athleticism to make up for that is incredible. If I'm the Giants, what I want to do is I'm going to know where he is on the play, and I'm going to run blockers at him like crazy. We're going to be pulling guards in his direction. We're going to be sending a fullback at him. We're going to have wide receivers, coming and chipping on him, and I'm going to beat him up because I don't think a lot of teams have done that. And it's it's going to be interesting to see how he responds to that. If you seek him out and you be the aggressor, you go on the offensive with him because he's usually the one running downhill, and I think that'll spell disaster. But Moose, how frustrating is this? That this is a guy that the Giants passed on.
Yeah.
He gets picked in the division. He could have been your replacement for Lawrence Taylor, seemingly. They were talking about him being MVP and Rookie of the Year. His first year, obviously, just ended up with the Rookie of the Year. But to have to face him twice a year now.
It's unbelievable.
Oh, my God.
He is great.
Well, hopefully
so
3 times a year.
Yeah.
You don't know.
You never know.
Yeah, let's get a playoff game. All right, so on the other side of the ball, the Giants are getting their edge rushers back. The Cowgirls come in here with a backup quarterback. Is that a place that maybe the Giants will play better on defense? Maybe
Well, the defense has been good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like the Panthers were 2 of 12 on third down conversions. I think you'd look at where they're generating turnovers.
But they have struggled to get pressure with the front four, right? They've had to bring blitzer,
I understand. Yeah, but
and my
that's
point
but
was,
that's
when
what,
I didn't get a chance to finish, is that they're facing a backup quarterback. So to put pressure on him could be something that tilts the game in the Giants' direction. Is that possible, Moose? That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think that's possible. I think, anytime you get guys as talented as Thibodeau and Ojulari back into the lineup for Wink Martindale, who likes to bring pressure in a lot of different ways, whether it be 4 or 5, he's going to be really creative in how he uses his defensive alignment. Yeah. I would expect the Giants to get pressure. I mean, the Cowboys' offensive line is one of the worst pass blocking offensive lines in the NFL and one of the best run blocking offensive lines in the NFL. So that's what they are, and that's what they've graded out the first 2 weeks. Every week is a little bit different. But, yeah, getting those guys back for Wink Martindale, he's got to be as happy as a pig in you know what.
I think it's so interesting, though, because having Thibodeau, Giants fans hope, we're just talking about Micah Parsons, he can be that for this Giants defense. And yes, the Giants defense overall has performed well. The one thing is they have to get pressure on the quarterback, and I think getting both Ojulari and Thibodeau in the lineup will be a huge help for them. But it was really funny because last week Thibodeau said, there's no way I'm not playing on Sunday, right, on Wednesday. And then this week he says, I'm just building and taking one step forward at a time. So based on that, he's definitely playing this week. I can only assume based on the language last week. But it's the Cowboys front is going to have their hands full. This isn't the same Cowboys offensive line that we're used to in years past. And obviously Tyron Smith down for most of, if not the whole year, is a big loss for this team. And they haven't been the same without him. I think, that backup quarterback in Cooper Rush, there's a tendency in the NFL for one game, a team is able to lift up and rally behind them. But as it plays out long term, they don't usually have that extended success. And I think that's what we saw last week. Home opener, obviously, in Dallas. Bengals, I think, expected to walk in there and beat them after they had that heartbreaking, emotional roller coaster loss in their opener against the Steelers. So the spot was right there. I don't know that the spot's going to be right here for Cooper Rush to go in and perform that incredible miracle again against the Giants.
All right, prediction time. By the way, the Jets had the miracle last week, not the Cowboys.
Well,
all right,
there were a lot of miracles.
There were a lot
of Hail prayers being answered.
Yeah, that's true.
Break out the whole rosary.
There was one, yeah. All right, prediction time. Who's going to win? Moose, we'll start with you.
I like the Giants. I like the Giants in the
that.
game. Yeah, I Rush at quarterback. I think it'll probably be more of a defensive-minded game. But I think they play a relatively clean game. I think it's going to be a fun atmosphere in MetLife, but I think the Giants.
Yeah, I think the atmosphere will be fun. I think this game's going to be really boring because I think both defense. I think Dallas's offense will be limited, and I think the Giants have shown they like to play these low-scoring, ugly games. And on the other side of the ball, I think Dallas's defense is still really good. They're able to get some pressure, and I think we talked about Parsons, but Van Der Esch is a really good linebacker there who can clean up a lot of missed tackles up front. So I think this one ends up being really low scoring, and I'm gonna go with like a 12-9 game.
12-9.
We're gonna field goal kick a shootout.
Who wins it?
Listen, I'm gonna go with the Giants at home on Monday Night Football.
All right.
Todd's going with the Giants.
Todd's going with the Giants.
There we go.
I do what Moose says.
No.
I was leading.
You never pick against a New York team.
Well, would you ever pick against a New York team?
Yes, I did last week. Yes.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah, I was wrong.
You were wrong? You're never
Yeah.
wrong. We got to check your tape.
I
Moose,
picked the
you're never
Browns.
wrong. I'm not willing to
Oh,
accept
no,
that.
yes.
That's right. I picked the Jets last week, but I also picked the Panthers. So we're
So you're 1-1.
There we
Yeah.
go.
All right. Well, I'm going to stay consistent. Go with the Giants.
There you
Moose,
go.
you were right about that. All right, let's switch it over to the Jets. Let's bring in Dangerous Dan, the Jet Man, Dan Leberfeld, the publisher of Jets Confidential. Dan, thank you for joining us, bud.
Always great to be on with you guys.
All right, I'm willing to accept that. Sounds disingenuous, but let's go with it. All right, so Dan, a little more sincerity. All right, let's start with this, Dan. You've been following the Jets.
If I were Dan, I might hang up right now.
Don't hang up. Dan, don't hang up. Don't listen to the Moose.
I'd advise just hanging up.
No,
Be like,
do it.
Todd,
Then Moose, you got to be a Jets expert.
I busted your chops a little bit. We cut it from the podcast before. I said this is football, not baseball. You're like, let's start again.
Yeah, let's start again. We got to get the right sport. Dan, we'll let you in soon. We're talking amongst ourselves first. We're having a coffee clutch. All right, so Dan, let's try to bring you in to be serious only for a second, and then we'll go back to the nonsense. Have you ever seen a more thrilling ending to a Jet game in your 3 or 4 decades of covering the Jets than last week?
Well, the Dolphin, the Jumbo Elliott catch, that game was pretty. Was that the Dolphins? I can't remember.
Monday Night Football, yes. Everybody went home. Jason Taylor was waving to the crowd, said, "Get home safe, beat the traffic."
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that Miami game, but nothing else that pops into my head as far as things that were that crazy that happened at the end of a Jet game. It was the perfect storm, as we all know by now. Missed extra point, onside kick, blown coverage on the Corey Davis touchdown, which you needed that because you needed a quick drive. I mean, just everything came into place for them. But you know what? Don't expect that stuff to happen anytime soon. So they got some things to fix moving forward.
Yeah, they do. I mean, it's, but for Saleh, how important was that victory for the head coach, Dan?
Well, very important. Obviously, the week before, all the stuff about taking receipts on the critics. So that quieted all that down for a bit. But it's one of those situations when you look at that Cleveland game, I'm not looking to rain on their parade. It was an amazing accomplishment. But when you look at the way they played defense in the game, I mean, that was not a good performance by their defense. They made a journeyman quarterback on his 4th team look like Aaron Rodgers, and Chubb and Kareem Hunt ran all over them. That is not a sustainable formula moving forward to play that kind of defense.
Minus the ayahuasca there, obviously, with Jacoby Brissett. I got to ask, though, so, you look at this win, and obviously Flacco has the gaudy numbers at the end, but what do you make of his performance overall in this one, and do you think he's going to be creating a controversy over there in Florham Park?
Well, he certainly should be. I mean, I think when you talk to players, and I'm not saying I talk to players about this, but the players in the locker room know who should be the quarterback. They're not stupid. They're seeing things that we're seeing. We'll see what happens this week against the Bengals. But if the players in the locker room think Flacco gives them a better chance to win than Zach Wilson, that's when you risk losing some of the locker room if you're the head coach. So you got to be really careful with that one. As far as Flacco's performance against Cleveland, what he did so well was he threw to the guy that was getting single coverage. With the 3 receivers the Jets have now, they really have a lot of weaponry at receiver when you look at Corey Davis and Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson. So basically you throw to the guy who's getting the single coverage and he's going to beat it. You can't cover Garrett Wilson with one guy. We saw that in the last game.
Were you surprised at how his development?
Not really, because of his pedigree. A 5-star recruit out of high school in Texas. All the big programs wanted him. And then he goes to Ohio State. He lives up to the 5-star billing, played in front of 100,000 people at home in some of his road games. None of this is too big for him. So I don't think it's a surprise how well he's doing.
So, Dan, coming to town are the defending AFC champions. They played in the Super Bowl last year, but their season is on the brink at 0-2. What do you expect out of this game? Can the Jets sort of carry some of that momentum from that miracle finish?
It's going to be a very difficult game. As you mentioned, the Bengals at 0-2 have their backs up against the wall, so the Jets are going to get their best effort. And let's be honest, in those 2 games, the Pittsburgh game and the Dallas game, both losses for Cincinnati, those games went right down to the wire. I mean, this wasn't a situation where the first two games the Bengals played terrible. They've got to tighten up their pass protection. And honestly, this could be a good matchup for them because the Jets are not getting a lot of sacks.
You know, I think the Bengals are an interesting team to look at because we talked a lot about preseason, right? The shortened preseason. Should starters play? Do you get the reps and whatnot? And obviously Burrow didn't play as he was dealing with the recovery from the appendectomy. But he started really slow in that game against Pittsburgh. Obviously tried to will them down the stretch, and if not for the blocked extra point by Fitzpatrick over there with the Steelers, they end up winning that game. And then last week, though, again, too, they started very slow on both sides of the ball. Cincinnati, Dallas jumped out to a big lead. They come back and tie it, and then Dallas has the ball last and it kicks the field goal. Do you expect Burrow to come out firing and a lot sharper than we've seen in the first 2 weeks?
Yeah, I do. I think he basically had his preseason games the last couple of weeks. You know, the way things have changed in the NFL with limited offseason work and limited training camp work and less preseason games, the preseason kind of goes into the September games for some of these teams. Now you look at the Buffalo Bills, a team that took the preseason seriously and played their starters. Look how they're rolling. So teams might have to revisit whether you play some starters in the preseason because some of these teams like Denver and the Bengals have come out really slow and they really didn't use their starters much or at all in the preseason.
Dan, the Jets win on Sunday. How does it look for them? Like, what's the game plan for them? How would you map it out?
Well, they got to play much better on defense. Like we talked before, Brissett lit them up. Brissett is an okay player, but he shouldn't be doing what he was doing to them last week. And the running game with Joe Mixon coming to town, they've got to tighten up their running game. They stopped the run week 1 against Cincinnati, against Baltimore. But when you look at the week 2 against Cleveland, the Browns had a much better offensive line and better running backs. So let's not forget, Baltimore, their top 2 running backs are still out injured, and they were playing a third-string left tackle for most of that game. So much better offensive line last week with facing the Browns, and they did match up well. I think the Bengals offensive line, which added a lot of new pieces this offseason, will start to play better now with a little more chemistry. So they've got to play the run better. If they don't play the run better than they did at Cleveland last week, they have very little chance in this game.
So, Dan, it's a week-to-week league where we tend to overreact every week. By all rights, the Jets should have lost last week, but they didn't. If they go ahead and beat Cincinnati, there's going to be a little bit of buzz around the team. At that point, Flacco would have won 2 in a row. What do you think they're going to end up doing at quarterback? Will it affect the way they treat Zach Wilson at all, or is it just when Wilson is healthy that they're going to play him?
I think they're going to keep it open-ended where they'll say, you know what, we're 2-1 if they beat the Bengals. Zach needs a little more time. I was watching Zach at practice today. He's got one of those sleeves on his right leg, one of those medical sleeves. Not that that means that much, but it shows you he's still working through something on that leg. So I think it's open-ended, and I think they'll ride Joe Flacco as the hot hand and just say Zach needs more time if that's the way things play out.
How did Zach look today in practice?
Well, we really didn't see much. In the stretching, he looked very good in the stretching, Todd. That's all.
The stretching was good?
Nice.
He's limber?
Yeah, he's very, very well stretched right now. He's ready to go.
Dan, I'm curious that when you look at it, a guy like Sauce Gardner, what have been your impressions first couple weeks, and now he gets a really, really strong challenge this weekend or this Sunday with the likes of Jamar Chase, even with T. Higgins dealing with a concussion.
Yeah, when you look at Sauce, I thought he had a little bit of a rough game last week against Cleveland and Amari Cooper. And what you saw in that game is Sauce was a man-to-man corner at Cincinnati. And you saw in the game in Cleveland, he was having some issues as far as zone coverage, passing guys off, communicating with some of his other defensive backs. So this zone coverage stuff with Sauce is a work in progress. But when he's allowed to run with a guy, play man-to-man like we saw on that PD he had against Mark Andrews in the Baltimore game, you see his rare talent.
How much do you put stock in last year's matchup between these two teams? Because obviously we know about the Jets' comeback last week. Last year when these two teams played, they were down 11 late in the fourth quarter. Obviously that was the Mike White game. Do you think there's a revenge factor on Cleveland's side? Do you think the Jets go in with the confidence saying, hey, we beat this team last year, so that carries some momentum? How do you view it?
There is a little carryover because a lot of the players, Cincinnati is a team that came back almost entirely intact from last year, because when you have the rookie quarterback on the rookie deal, you can keep the pieces around him. So the Bengals are a very similar team. I think the Bengals will learn a lot from that game. Their defensive coordinator, Lou Anarumo from Staten Island, that was not one of their better games. And I think they're going to make major adjustments in how they defend the Jets scheme this year and learn from last year.
Dan, how do you think this one plays out on Sunday?
I think the Bengals are going to win. They're the desperate team. I did not like the way the Jets played defense last week. That was a really big problem. It's not getting a lot of attention because of the miraculous win at the end, but you can't win consistently in the NFL, giving up almost 200 yards rushing and making a journeyman quarterback look like Lamar Jackson out there. So I had to come up with another elite quarterback to fill in the blank with there. But you can't win that way. So until they improve that defense and tighten things up, the Bengals have so many weapons, as you guys have said. I think the Bengals, the desperate team with a lot of weapons going against the defense that really struggled last week, I think the Bengals win this game.
Dan, thank you for your prediction. Joe?
Joe likes the Bengals.
I do.
That.
I like the Bengals.
He's all over Cincinnati.
I mean, come on. This week, if they're going to show any signs of life, it's got to be this week. And I think that the hardest thing for a young team to do is repeat success, right?
Yeah.
And once you win, now you're feeling so high. Joe Flacco was dancing in that locker room as they're coming off the field, and enjoy it. But I think there's a little bit of a hangover from that comeback win. And I think it just most of the time in the NFL, the team that needs it more, that extra motivation proves to be the difference, and I'm going to go with the Bengals.
I'm with you. I mean, I'm with you. I like Cincinnati. I mean, they're not going to go winless. I know the Jets have had success against Cincinnati at MetLife Stadium, winning 10 of their last 11.
It's insane.
And you got last year. Give me the more desperate team, more talented team, better quarterback team. Jets, miraculous. I mean, that was an unbelievable comeback. Got to also remember they got thoroughly outplayed over the course of that game, and they were down 13 with 1:50 to go. So, with that, I would take the Bengals. How about you, Todd?
So, Moose, everything you said is 100% accurate, except for your prediction. You never go against the hot hand. The Jets are on fire for the last 2 minutes of that game. It's going to continue into the game against Cincinnati, who they beat last year on this very field.
Yes.
And that is what was the catalyst for Cincinnati to go to the Super Bowl.
And the fans will be clamoring for Mike White at MetLife Stadium. They did it last time. They'll be doing it again.
That's sadly a distinct possibility. All right, thank you all for listening. I'm going with the Jets.
Stunning.
Stunning. Please watch the Moose and more of his comedy on the New York Blitz.
New York Blitz, Saturday night, 10:30.
With Greg Buttle talking Jets, David Tyree
New York
talking
Sports
Giants.
Nation, Sunday nights at 11.
Aaron Judge chasing a record.
He's going to have the record by then.
Sports.
Hopefully.
That's it.
That'll be a record.
It's a great time to be a sports fan in New York.
It's
and let's not
wonderful.
forget hockey back on the ice, basketball getting back
Drop
on the
the
court.
puck.
No
Yankee
doubt.
Nation. You know what? Just put it on picks, hit record, step
You're
away.
good to
We're
go.
good.
You're good to go.
All right. Thank you for listening.
Thanks,
See you
guys.
next week. Moose, good promo.
Yes, that's it.
Look at you.